As somebody who's been in it since the beginning, you've seen the whole spectrum of what type of project requests, what type of technologies are being implemented. What's your favorite aspect about Ordinals? What's your favorite technology that's come out of this whole entire thing over the last 8 months?
I'm a UX kind of a trained person, so I think the most exciting thing I've seen come out of Ordinals is really this Bitcoin UX tenfold, 100-fold, I don't know, but really pushed it forward in terms of where it was this time last year. There was some hardcore Bitcoin wallets there, but not really user-friendly. There was no marketplaces, there was no inscription tools, etc., things like that. So I think that's been a really great innovator for the space. And then the likes of Xverse or Hero Wallet who come in and offer that really nice, like Ordinals first, Bitcoin first experience in the wallet, marketplace functionality with PSBTs. All these really nice one-click things is something I'm really excited about.
Welcome back to the show. Finally getting this episode underway. I'm here with Brian Laughlan, one of the co-founders of Satoshibles and OrdinalsBot. We've been discussing this podcast for, what's it been, 4 or 5 months now, since the beginning of the whole Ordinals movement. Brian and I have been working together through Emblem and through OrdinalsBot since the beginning on a handful of different projects, where we also got to do Coldie's project together, the Filthy Fiat. Remember that? That feels like it was a year ago. It's been maybe 4 months, dude. Time has flown by. So I'm excited to finally catch up with you, my friend. Thank you for joining me here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And like you said, it's been a long journey. So much has happened in the last 6 months in total. But yeah, it's been really exciting, and really had the great chance to work with you and Emblem on some cool projects, and hopefully some more in the future as well.
Yeah, you guys have been crushing it over at OrdinalsBot. I feel like every time I look over there, there's a new feature, and a lot of those features, you were generally first, kind of to the punch. A lot of the inscribing on different types of sets and the launch pad. There was just all kinds of different things that you've been doing. But before we do dive into that, that everyone wants to hear about, tell me a little bit about yourself, Brian, dude. How'd you end up in this crazy place of crypto?
The crazy crypto world. Yeah, it's been a journey. I all started in like 2021, officially, from a career point of view, but I dabbled in crypto since around 2017 probably. Started collecting some stuff and getting some crypto in my bags. Really kind of fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, really enjoyed that. And then, Ethereum came out, and I kind of liked the fact that you could build stuff with it and things, but I didn't build anything with it at the time. But I just thought I seen the potential, so I started buying some of that. So I dabbled in a couple of cryptos at the time, and then held on to it essentially through up until 2020, and then during that summer, I had the whole DeFi summer, and had my fair share of rug pulls and testing things. But I was lucky enough to not lose anything I wasn't willing to lose. That whole saying, don't invest more than you're willing to lose. I certainly lived by that. I certainly lost stuff, but it wasn't enough to break the bank or anything. So just testing stuff out and playing with things really gave me an insight and opened my eyes a lot to see what the space was like. And then at the end of 2020, as the kind of DeFi thing was kind of slowing down, I started seeing a lot of this NFT buzzwords popping around. People are talking about NFTs, and I'm like, I remember NFTs, like this crypto kitty thing. I remember this something, and I remember crypto punks. I didn't get any, but I remember those. Was it those? And I looked into it, and it was, But these DeFi projects were essentially using this buzzword to try and gain momentum on their projects, so they would start offering NFTs to their users and things, but the artwork was this diabolical. It's really bad artwork, and I'm like, surely if this is going to be a thing, the artwork's going to be good, right? They've got to be genuine artists and things. So with that in mind, I had the idea of launching my own project, and like I mentioned, I was a real fan of Bitcoin and the lore around Satoshi Nakamoto, and nobody really knows who he or she is. And just I really loved the concept of that. So I kind of wanted to make a collection around about that, basically. And I'm not an artist, so I had to find an artist, and I was lucky enough to find our artist that's still with the project, Ayub. He's a young artist from Morocco. And he's got this kind of really nice comic book, retro vintage comic book style that I wanted So I set about making this NFT collection based on Satoshi, and we used Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto's kind of image for the collection. So I gave Ayub a photo of this man, and he's like, "Who's this? Your uncle or something?" He's like, they had no idea who this guy was. He's like, "Why am I drawing this Japanese elderly gentleman for you?" Because he's usually just drawing cats for people of other family portraits and things. So I'm like, no, trust me, this draw it. So once he drew it, it was perfect the way I wanted to say, okay, now take his hair off and put this clown wig on and put these Bitcoin glasses on. It's like, dude, what are you smoking? What are we doing here? Because he didn't understand what I was trying to build. So I had to show him like the likes of Bored Ape Yacht Club and the CryptoPunks as an idea of what we're trying to do. And he's like, okay. So then we spent the next few months basically designing the layers of the collection. And then I spent the next few months learning smart contract development, how to launch an NFT on Ethereum. And we put it all together, and the project was launched, and we called it Satoshibles, so collectible Satoshibles. And it was great. We launched it at the perfect time. It was June 2021. The NFT market was just exploding, and we minted them all in one weekend. It was the craziest weekend of my life. We made a bunch of Ethereum, and now we've got a whole community overnight, and it's like just a really exciting time. So, of course, the DJ that I am just instantly quit my job and went straight all in on it, and just like really tried to build the project out and see what we could do and build the community. And yeah, it's been ever since then. I've been in this space just building stuff, building products for like roundabout NFTs and Web3 and communities. Including an NFT bridge that I created from Ethereum to Stacks blockchain, and then now more recently the OrdinalsBot, kind of a thing that's really exploded in the Bitcoin scene as well.
So through your short history since DeFi summer 2020, you've introduced a handful of new ideas to the market. One of them focusing on Satoshibles first. You have this bridge that goes between Ethereum and Stacks. But first, like, why, from when you deployed Satoshibles, you deployed it on Stacks first, and then you built the bridge to Ethereum, or was it the other way around? Ethereum to
the other way around. So I didn't have a clue about Stacks basically before. In June 2021, I didn't know about Stacks.
So where did that intersection come in to deploy on Stacks? Because even today, having this conversation in the end of August 2023, Stacks is still somewhat, not spoken about as much, and even Ordinals is starting to overtake it. Where was that incentive to first build this bridge to go to Stacks, but then even to, have a community over there as well on this L2 of Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it basically all stems from the theme of the project, right? It's based on Satoshi, who is the creator of Bitcoin. So, like, launching a Bitcoin-themed NFT on Ethereum was also like gave me a little bit of backlash from people. It's like I got some comments saying, "Why didn't you launch this on Bitcoin?" or etc. And I'm like, well, Bitcoin's can't really handle NFTs. And then that's where actually Trevor Owens, he's a great Stacks advocate and now Ordinals, really big Ordinals advocate, Bitcoin advocate in general. He actually minted 50 of the Satoshibles. It's like he minted 50 of these things, and then got in touch with me and said, "Oh, these were really cool, but I wish you did them on Stacks." And I said, "What's that?" And he told me that Stacks is a layer 2. They've got smart contract functionality. It's secured by Bitcoin, and I really fell in love with that idea. I thought, "Wow, okay, cool." Like and it's a relatively small, blockchain. I've maybe an opportunity to go there and try and make a real impact, and maybe my collection could become quite a big collection there, in terms of maybe it's the CryptoPunks of Bitcoin, for example. That was my mindset. So I went around to kind of figuring out how can we get my collection on another chain, and one of the ways to do that would be just to launch another 5,000 on Stacks, and then you've got like two sets of collections. You've now got 10,000 NFTs. I didn't really want to expand the kind of a supply like that, so it led me onto a bridge, and I looked and see if there's any bridges, and there was products like Emblem Vault who are doing great things with connecting different blockchains. They didn't have Stacks at the time, and then there's a couple of other bridges out there, but most of the bridges were about fungible tokens, right? So like crypto, not necessarily NFTs. So there just wasn't a solution there. So I tried to build one, and the way we did it was essentially it's a kind of semi-trusted service. So if you're using the bridge, you're kind of trusting the project. But the way it works is, you lock the Ethereum NFT on a bridge contract on Ethereum. Then we have a service running in the middle, listening for those lock events, and then it will unlock the corresponding ID on Stacks. So it's a two-way bridge, and that works both ways. So when you bridge over to Stacks, you can bridge it back as well. And we launched that on stacksbridge.com, which was the kind of idea. I had a grand idea of also maybe incorporating other Stacks projects there to come back to Ethereum and vice versa, but we only stuck with Satoshibles at the time being. And it was a really great experiment because it made me realize that actually you're not just bridging NFTs to another blockchain, you're bridging your community. So I brought this to my community, who were obviously mostly Ethereum-based people. And I said to them, listen, this Stacks thing might be an interesting play for us. We could go there, really make a stamp and see what we can do, and kind of make our mark there. And then they all responded really well with it. And we ended up getting about 30% of the collection bridged over to Stacks. And then not just that, people were actually launching their own collections there, or they were buying other collections there. So we moved, we were net positive, I would say, for the ecosystem. So I think it proved the concept of interoperability and being able to bridge communities between chains, which I'm really proud of saying that I had a part of that, and kind of proving that concept. And then, since then, Stacks is continuing to do great things, but the Ordinals has really took a lot of steam out of the NFT market on Stacks, because they are actually Bitcoin NFTs, right? They're digital assets on Bitcoin. So that's why most of my attention has been on Ordinals at the minute on Bitcoin, but I am keeping a close eye on Stacks because they are really embracing Ordinals, and they've really ramped up their Bitcoin integration because of it. And they're coming out with some really great updates soon, which might actually have a really nice connection to Ordinals in terms of bridging Ordinals directly from Bitcoin, essentially L1 to Stacks L2. So I'm really keeping an eye on seeing what happens there.
So first, I want to say that you might be the first that I'm aware of that bridged, or one of the earliest that kind of bridged your communities together. I mean, DGods is one of the infamous ones, right, of moving from Solana to, they moved ETH from Solana to Polygon, then they moved DGods from Solana to ETH. You did this by almost a year and a half, or maybe 2 years even beforehand, before, bridging technologies were really kind of front and center, before even all the bridge hacks that had happened. How did you go about building this bridge? Was this something of custom solution? Did you have a partnership? And did you have any concerns before actually implementing this and realizing, I was able to successfully migrate culture across blockchains, and my community is willing to participate in this kind of new endeavor?
Yeah, so the community bridging aspect of it was a nice surprise. We didn't really, we thought it might happen, but we weren't guaranteed that was going to happen. We didn't know how many people were going to be adopting it. So you need to go to Stacks. Gamma's changed. They've ripped. If you go to click on the Stacks menu point there, because they've ripped out the. They've completely separated Ordinals from Stacks.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. So it's now stacks.gamma.io. And if you go to top collections there and then go to all time, you'll see I think we're number 8 in the whole of Stacks ecosystem at the moment. Wow.
Yeah, look at it. You have, so I pulled it up. Yeah, stacks.gamma.io. So that's the new one. There's 273,000 stacks in volume. I believe today's recording, Stacks is around 50 cents or so, something close to there. Yeah, so doing a significant amount of volume on Stacks, right? This may seem low comparative to OpenSea and Ethereum, but this is, again, all on top of Bitcoin. And this is 2 years before Ordinals even came into existence.
Exactly, and I think that the NFT scene has really cooled down a lot on the Stacks side of things. See, 2 months ago was the last activity there, essentially because Ordinals has really closed that gap. But I think that what Stacks has got to bring to the table is that smart contract functionality. I think when people do need that extra layer of logic that you can't really do with PSPTs, etc. I think Stacks will come into play there. But yeah, there was a lot of considerations, and I did get some partners to build it. Obviously, I got 2 devs that I knew from the community jumped on board, and one was an Ethereum dev, one was a Bitcoin dev, and we worked on both sides, right? Because you had to build a bridge contract on Ethereum and Solidity, then you had to build a Clarity contract, a bridge contract on the Stack side. So those are the two components, and then I kind of worked on the middle part, which is the JavaScript part, the kind of service running in the middle. And we put it all together, fully tested it, of course. And I think also we were really open to the community about the fact that it's not trustless as well, which is a really important factor. You know, there is a service running in the middle, so that was an important thing to really communicate to people as well. And you know, it seemed to be okay for a lot of people to kind of trust us. I'm fully doxed, and the team is as well. So we did build a lot of trust in the community at the time. So yeah.
You guys have really done a good job doing this. And now looking at it retrospectively from the community and the culture side, how would you say your community responded to this bridging mechanism of going back and forth? What were the initial hurdles that you had to overcome, maybe that you can relate to maybe some NFT owners who are looking to go multi-chain? What were the main hurdles that you had to overcome, and any type of advice for those who are looking to become a multi-chain community?
Yeah, I think the Ethereum fees were quite a challenge to try and figure out, because what we wanted to do was essentially take an escrow. So when you bridge it over to Stacks, you're locking it in the Ethereum smart contract, bridge contract. And when you bridge back, someone has to pay that fee to get it out of the bridge contract on ETH. So the way we kind of figured that one out was that we essentially have an escrow fee taken on the way over that we then collect in a pot. And then that's then used to handle the kind of the release functions on the way back. So it's like almost like a return stamp you pay basically to get you back. So that was a little bit of a challenge to figure out as well. But I'm really happy with the end result, because what it is basically there's no burning mechanism or anything. The ID that you lock is locked there, and the same ID number 27, for example, is unlocked on Stacks. So you have this history on each chain for that particular ID. You can pull up the ID and you can see all the transfers in and out of the bridge, etc. That never gets lost. Whereas some other bridges might do, for example, on the target chain, they might do just like a temporary placeholder thing that gets burned on the way back. That does add more security, because then it's like there's no chance of it being leaked on the other side. But I like our mechanism because you can have that history on both sides.
Yeah, you guys have really crushed it. And recently, I believe this was earlier this year, you added a companion collection called the Ordinals, or the Satoshable, the Ordinals. Give us an explanation of the reasoning to why to extend into Ordinals, and what type of impact did that have on the Satoshable collection now that you have two different types of Bitcoin NFTs within this one brand?
Yeah, so I was really at the beginning trying to figure out how do I get the 5,000 there, right? So if you go to Magic Eden, you'll be able to see this collection, and that one. I was thinking, how do I get my 5,000 collection there? And at the time, really early in February there was no real collection concept happening, and then also there was the big problem was, how do I make sure that the owner of the NFT, who is either on Stacks or Ethereum, is the one who gets the equivalent one on as an ordinal. So I'm still trying to figure that problem out actually today. There's a couple of solutions that I'm thinking about with teleburning and things like that I might look into. But before I could even figure that problem out, I just wanted to get something on Inscribe, basically. So we decided to make this really limited collection of 100 ordinal Satoshibles, and I had this idea of also zooming out a little bit to show more of the body. And because of this zooming out effect, I had to get Ayu basically to redraw all of the body traits. And in turn, we actually added a couple of extra ones, which are these like ordinals, branded kind of clothing, and a couple of other items as well. And we just launched it, and we launched it quite early. It was inscribed at like 51,000 which is like when you consider there's now 27 million inscriptions.
Early
is a pretty early collection, yeah. So it's not had a lot of traction like the OMB and things like that. But maybe it's a slow burn, right? Maybe people will see the value of it long term when they realize it's great artwork on chain, and it's also a really early inscribed collection. And by the way, the artwork itself was inscribed at 2000 by 2000 pixels. So I spent about $6,000 inscribing it. So I put that cost up front to get a really nice high quality inscription on chain. This is way before the recursion days, right, and things like that, which is now an easier way of doing that. But it's early, and I'm happy to put it on there. So yeah, and I think it's a nice addition to the kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm starting to see this more and more between different types of community owners or project leads begin to expand and deploy collections across multiple chains. And it seems like Ordinals tends to be this like more ultra exclusive collection, right? You use DGods, for example, they have 585 or 595 on Ordinals, right? Then they have 10,000 over, or I think it's 10,000 over on Ethereum. Here you have 5,000 over on Ethereum and Stacks, and then you have 100 here. It creates this sense of exclusivity. It also insulates some of the collections from one another, whether there's price action and momentum. Like, for example, again, using DGods, when DGods went from, I think it was like 10 ETH down to 3 ETH, the Bitcoin DGods tended to lag actually much further behind from the downward price action. So it's a little bit interesting. But how do you then tend to bring them all together and unify them? Because now you have Solidity language, right? You have Clarity for Stacks, and then you have Ordinals, which is on chain. There's no real way for all of them to interact. So how do you tend to bring that all of the community together to make them feel that it is all one project and not 3 separate collections on 3 different blockchains?
Yeah, I mean, from the 5,000 collection, the OG collection, we call it, because it's split between 2 blockchains and it has the same IDs, it kind of is the same collection. That's a thing that I think that stands us out apart from other collections who have bridged or launched on multiple chains. We have literally the same IDs, so you own both of those, and that's reflected in Discord, for example. The roles are the same. You have the Bitcoin maxi role if you've got a Bitcoin trait on either chain. So that we unified it that way with roles essentially. On the Bitcoin side, on the Ordinal side, we do the same thing. We've not done it yet, but we have plans to like just incorporate special rules in the Discord for those ones as well. And then we have bold ambitions as well of launching Satoshi Coin, which is going to be more of a unifier for everything. So, but that's maybe a little bit down the road for now.
Is that going to be a BRC20 or an ERC20? Right, you guys,
It's frustrating because it was actually going to be on Stacks. It was going to be a Stacks token. So, Stacks has smart contract functionality, right? It has exactly the same concepts as Ethereum does in terms of ERC 721 and ERC 20. It's the same on Stacks. It's called SIP9 is actually the equivalent on Stacks. It's the same idea. You've got a smart contract with a token and it has a max supply and you can trade it and you can transfer it, etc. So we had staking, we had a claim process, we had everything, all the smart contracts all ready to go on Stacks. And then Ordinals hit, and put a big break on that. So we're waiting to see how Stacks plays out. If Stacks does become a big player in the fungible space with this new SBTC release they're doing, the Nakamoto upgrade that's coming, can they get some more traction and start pulling maybe some of the BRC20 crowd onto their chain to utilize the smart contracts? If so, then we'll pull the trigger on the Satoshi coin there. If not, we'll see where it goes. I'm looking to the future, and I think that BRC20 or fungible assets, it won't be BRC20 forever. I think they will be offloaded to some other protocol. Or it'll be kind of its own envelope, or there'll be a migration or something. I don't think it can be sustainable in the Ordinals envelope forever, in my opinion. So I'm just kind of waiting to see where that goes.
Yeah, very, very exciting. It's going to be an interesting ultimatum that BRC20 owners are going to have to face when there is a viable option for a more upgraded version. You could see something where BRC20 owners will just basically create a new coin and airdrop everybody 1-to-1 and say, hey, now we're operating over here. There could be some resistance. It's tough, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah,
and to
the crowd will follow the volume. Whenever people are doing stuff, it'll happen. So
the tough part is getting people to speculate, because once the speculation happens and then there's money involved, then that tends to be where everyone comes. And then once you're bag holders, then that's when people actually want to build, because they're like, oh, I'm holding a bunch of trash. I need to build some value on this somehow, so that I'm not just sitting here on my hands the entire time. And it looks like here too, you have monster Satoshibles where are introducing, it looks like a burn mechanic of some sort. Is that what I see here, where it says burn 1672? There's 666 primes, and the total supply is 2299. Give us a rundown. What's going on over here?
So this has not been updated, this website, in a long time. But, this was our kind of secondary collection that we launched, similar to like what the Mutants did for Board Yacht Club. So we launched this in October 2021, and with that came a really nice burn mechanic where, essentially you could mint a bunch of these monsters, and then you can collect the parts. So we had different types of monsters with different parts: werewolf, vampire, zombie, etc. And then you could basically collect the zombie body, the zombie head, etc. Take these 4 NFTs, burn them to create a prime monster, which is then going to be full vampire with a really nice background. So those are the full ones there, for example. It was just really fun. And we had like a lab, and we had Dr. Satoshi, and it was just really cool. The community really loved it. And we launched this as a kind of secondary collection to the thing, and then we built a game, amazing artwork from Ayub, as you can see, right? And we have really cool backgrounds and different things, and a lot of really interesting traits. We burned them all. I think in the end, as I say, that's out of date, that thing at the top there. But I think in the end, we ended up burning. So there was 6,666 monsters. And I think we burned over half of that to create the Prime 666. So now there's about 3,700 something monsters in the supply, which is just a really cool thing. And 666 prime monsters, and there was a couple of hidden gems in there as well. So there's the Bone Crew. So there's like, if you scroll down a little bit, there's 13 or 20 or something Bone Crew ones. Scroll down a little bit more. Yeah, it's there on the left there. So the Bone Crew, so just like Satoshi skeletons, basically there's 25 of them. And then there was the Chosen one, which was the Devil. And then there was a Branded, which had a branding on it. And then if you minted one of those, you're into the prize pool essentially for 6 ETH, 6.66 ETH. A lot of just fun little things we put on in a smart contract. And again, kind of used that collection. We have like monsters roles in the Discord and things. We actually bridged this collection as well to Stacks. So this is one of the second collection that's been bridged also to Stacks. So it's a two-way bridge again. So that was a challenge, because obviously we had to consider half of them have been burned as well, and you can't. So there was a whole thing there. But yeah, you can bridge these back and forth from Stacks as well. So that was the Satoshable monsters.
Hey, if there's anything I've learned about community management in this space, is that the community wants gamification, even on a small scale. Even if there's 100 people participating, then obviously their win rate goes up. And then if you add, a 6.66 ETH prize pool, which today's equivalent would be about, 10 grand, if there's only a few hundred people and they're like, I'm going to participate because I have the odds are in my favor comparative to these, allowless gimmicks where you get a 1 in 400,000 chance, and a lot of those are botted anyways. So you really never had a chance to begin with. These kind of things are fun, and they really pay it forward. What would you say today then, before we kind of move on to where you spend most of your time now? What is like the 6-month or multi-year plan for Satoshibles? Is it a social club? Is there something with utility? Is there a master plan to bridge it all together and bond it, and you're going to teleburn it all onto ordinals so that you could tell Casey that he's awesome. What's the end goal here?
Yeah, so there's a couple of tracks there. So I think that the migration to ordinals is something we're seriously trying to figure out at the minute, because we really love the idea of like the provenance being there, right, being on Bitcoin. But in terms of the total, kind of vision for Satoshibles, it's something we were already starting with before ordinals anyway, which is going to be more of a kind of a Bitcoin kind of a collector's community where you can collect really cool artwork, and you can buy really cool merch. So one of the things that Ayub is really great at as well is creating merch and designing stuff for t-shirts and things. So we wanted to utilize that and then build a really cool merch store and build a lot of cool merch tooling, Web3 tooling, and then really plug in Satoshibles as a first kind of a really good membership kind of a functionality in that system. So yeah, building out Web3 tooling basically, and building out kind of really nice Web3 merchandise play, and then plugging in artists from the space and selling, rare items through our marketplace. That's the kind of Satoshibles vision is what I'm trying to do there. And now with ordinals, that might even be even better, because then we can really do some really rare ordinals items through the same platform and tie in the merch and different things like that.
Bitcoin NFT artist collective. I love it. We'll always need art on Bitcoin, because that is one of the running narratives, is that ultimately all of the best art is going to end up on Bitcoin because of its permanent storage solution. And so if you want to store some quality stuff and not just use an IPFS, link where you can at some point could lose, that data, Bitcoin is the best alternative. Tell us the story. How did you end up on OrdinalsBot? I think you might have been the first inscription tool, or you were one of the first inscription tools back in, I guess, beginning of February or end of January, like this account says, where ordinals didn't even really start exploding until I think midway February. So you were really ahead of the game. At first, what interests you about ordinals? And then also, what led you to creating OrdinalsBot? Obviously, you saw this coming before anybody else to help you land to where you are today.
Yeah, I was really plugged into the Bitcoin NFTs because of my involvement with Stacks and really paying attention to what's going on with Bitcoin and digital assets and things. So when I heard about ordinals and I heard that actually this is going to be, digital, putting assets on chain directly, and I really went down the rabbit hole because it was really interesting to me, because I seen it as, like you said, that maybe a potential IPFS replacement, right, and storing the data on one of the most secure the most secure blockchain really captivated me. So I went down the rabbit hole, read through the handbook that Casey provided, looked at some YouTube videos, tried to figure it out. Realized that you need to run your own Bitcoin node. You need to run the ordinals client. There's a technical hurdle there to try and get involved in just inscribing these things. And I'm a UX guy. I really like nice user experiences, and the best UX to solve that would just be essentially a drag and drop interface, right? But you drag and drop the file you want, the optimization, the inscription, everything, the sending is all handled basically automated by a service. And that's what we tried to build with OrdinalsBot really early. And luckily, my co-founder was kind of had the same idea. Actually, he was building something similar, and we combined ideas. I put a front end on his back end essentially, and we launched it over the weekend, and it went on fire. At the time, this was in February 7th, so really early. And at the time, people were inscribing like OTC via Discord. So someone says, hey, can someone inscribe something for me? And then another person would say, yeah, give me, $1,000 and I'll do it for you. And then it was like this whole trusted, weird, horrible setup. So we're like, okay, that's another proving point that there's a sort of service has to be created that has a good price and is also automated and trusted. So we launched that, and at the time, the Bitcoin Punks, one of the really early collections on Ordinals, they were minting at the time. And the way they did their mint was this byte perfect mint. So they were actually taking the exact punk image from Ethereum and then they were inscribing that. The reason it had to be byte perfect was the whole mechanic of their mint was the first person to mint that exact byte perfect punk got it, essentially, and anyone after that, inscribed that after it, didn't get it. So that's how their mint mechanic worked, and a couple of others followed the same mint mechanic at the beginning. So, of course, people were on a mad dash to inscribe these things first. And when the news broke that there was a service online that you could just drag and drop files and it was worked, we got bombarded. Our server completely melted, and we went down for like 6 hours because we just didn't expect that traffic. So we scaled up, we got it all back up and running, and then we kind of like relaunched, and then it was running much more smoothly. And then we had to deal with a whole bunch of support tickets because there was a limbo state of like, where's my thing? So there's a whole support ticket thing that took us a while to get through. But it was really exciting at the time, because it was a huge influx of users, almost like instant market fit for a product, which is really, really satisfying. And then since then, we've just been extending the service and automating it and building out our API, because that's the play we want to do. We want to be a real infrastructure player and make it really easy and just follow that ethos of automate as much as we can and make it really easy for people to get involved in the space.
It's smart because now that we fast forward, from January to where we are today, almost heading into September, every marketplace has their own inscription service. There's now even niche or specified inscription services for rare sats or unique sats, or just pretty much everything that you want. You really have to separate yourself apart. How does that API play in? Is this something where anybody can just kind of plug in the OrdinalsBot system into whatever software or infrastructure that they're building? Is that kind of the idea? And then how do you guys profit off of that, or how do you keep the business model running?
Yeah, so essentially any inscription that goes through our backend, we take a service fee, right? So that's just the way we can generate revenue that way. So the API is essentially sending us files to inscribe, right? So it's all through the same flow as if you uploaded it from the website. And in terms of plugging and playing, yeah, so the API itself is a standard REST API. You've got endpoints where you can create an order, send it a payload, and then we'll send you back like the payment information. You can build your own UI around about that to make sure they do the payments properly. But actually, a couple of weeks ago, we just released the OrdinalsBot SDK. And if you're not familiar, an SDK basically kind of is a really nice thing that sits side by side with an API. And it's essentially a really nice development kit, which makes the plugging and playing aspect much, much easier. You just plug in the API key, and then there's a ton of convenience functions with that. So you can just you initialize an OrdinalsBot kind of an instance in your code base anywhere, and then you can just call create order and all the different functionality is there, and it's all a really nice developer experience. So that's something that we're now really pushing out to try and build out and make it as easy as to use as possible, alongside with a ton of code examples. So for example, we're about to launch this UI where you can just pull in and plug in an inscription UI. You can plug in a marketplace UI. You can plug in the payment scheme part if you want, just the fees part, the rare sats part. So we're really breaking all these and get going with it. But the point being that that'll all funnel back then through our infrastructure, right, and our liquidity management, which at this point is able to handle the tens of thousands of inscriptions. So I think that's our model, and I think even the likes of projects that are already doing their own, maybe they're running their own node, they might want to focus on something else, right? They might want to focus on the marketplace side of things, or maybe the community side of things, and not really have to worry about the inscription and making sure it's all up to date and it's reorg resistant and etc. So these are prime candidates to just actually offload all of that infrastructure essentially to our back end, and then just pay a small service fee and then use our infrastructure essentially and focus on the stuff that matters for them. So that's kind of how we're targeting customers in that regard. And it's the same model as the likes of, for example, Infura on Ethereum or one of those services. Anybody could essentially run their own Ethereum node and in their indexer and etc. and build their own API around about that. But some people just want to build a mint page, or they want to build something, so they don't bother with that. They just plug in an Infura API, and that's all handled in the back end. It's got great uptime, great scalability, etc. So that's what we're targeting and what we're trying to build, for ordinals and for inscriptions mainly, but we're building out the API to do a lot of other cool kind of a convenience style things that people might want to just offload to us, and we'll handle it for them.
Yeah, the B2B side is very important and tends to get lost in this hyper-competitive space. One thing that I noticed you guys were really first to the market to do was inscribe on old and rare Satoshis. And here on the screen, I've pulled up your definition of what these are, which varies from the year to the Rodham or rarity index to whatever comes into the future. I'm curious, because I've never really asked somebody who's operated a tool before, how tough is it to set up something like this? Is there an automated process where you're on the back end kind of panning for these types of sets and then you set them aside to allocate it? Are you going to a different service and asking for it and then you're kind of playing the intermediary? How does the rare sets inscription tool service work on the back end?
Yeah, it's really kind of exciting. But I think just to go back a little bit, like when I started going investigating ordinals and looking at ordinal theory and everything, Casey this is his number one reason for inventing ordinal theory. It wasn't necessarily to inscribe his artwork. It was mainly to collect these uncommon and diamonds and the sea of Bitcoin. He really loves this stuff, and I bought into that really early on as well. And I was hoping the narrative would go that way. And then, it did when you seen the likes of, for example, ord.io from Leonidas really highlighting the rare sats categories. It elevated that a lot. And that was the point where we said, okay, now we need to double down on this because I think that it's brewing, things are really starting to heat up here. And we started basically panning our inflow of Bitcoin. So every time someone inscribes, they pay with Bitcoin, right? So we've got this funnel of Bitcoin coming in. We essentially put like a panner in front of that with some parameters, and we're basically like panning all the Bitcoin that comes in as it filters through, and we're just pinging out any of these uncommons or pizzas or rares or whatever it might be, and then we're collecting them in our own wallets essentially. So we're building up our own stock. So that's how we did it at the beginning. And then now we've went one step further where we actually have an internal SAT extractor service and a SAT scanning service where we're just scanning like big chunks of places and exchanges and different areas. And we're just like throwing tons of Bitcoin at it essentially and pulling it back out and then extracting a bunch of stuff. So the other day we ended up like pulling like 50 million pizza sats in one go. I was like, holy hell, it's a lot. So we've got a big stock of this stuff. And then now the question was, what do we do with it? And one of the first things, which is quite an easy lift, because we've got a great liquidity infrastructure management at the back end. And essentially these wallets are kind of that are storing these rare ones are just following a similar pattern. It was quite easy for us just to essentially point to that wallet and say, take a sat from that and inscribe onto that, So that's essentially how it works. On our APIs as well, you can define rare sats uncommon. And then when that order gets placed, the order will return with the price of the inscription, but also the additional fee for that uncommon sat. And then once the payment gets paid, our back end will read that and say, okay, this is meant to be inscribed in an uncommon. It knows to use that uncommon wallet to pull out the proper UTXO, inscribe onto that, and then that'll get sent to the user. So it's just it's built into our liquidity management, and it's kind of being smart on where you source them and where you can find them. And now we're really looking forward to like launching some great API functionality around managing these things, trading them, selling them, automating that whole thing as well, and diving into that space. So that's coming soon as well.
As you were explaining that, I was imagining like a Satoshi factory line almost, where your different wallets are these different parts of the factory, and you're like, all right, here we need an uncommon, throw it down the conveyor belt so that we can, exactly. you can inscribe on it.
And the most craziest thing about all of this is that it's just sats, it's just Bitcoin. This is all theoretical magic sauce that Casey just decided is worth something. And the whole community said, yeah, we agree. And now it is, right? So now our uncommon goes from anywhere from $800 to $1,000 for one sat. the smallest unit of Bitcoin. So it's incredible. I mean, it's really exciting to attribute this value to these things and essentially make them, non-fungible. And now there's new narratives cropping up as well. And there's this thing called black sats, which is essentially the opposite of an uncommon. So an uncommon is the first Satoshi in a block that's mined, and a black sat is the last one. So just by saying this, hey, do you think this is cool? People are saying yes, and now it's become people want them and they want to start inscribing on them, they want to start trading them. And where does that end, right? I have no idea where it ends. Like I was thinking potentially, if someone wants to inscribe on Satoshi's grandmother's who knows? But it's a really interesting narrative, and it adds another flavor to the whole digital asset space in Bitcoin that Ethereum, etc., doesn't have. And it just gives us gravitas to like collecting these things and making them. Bitcoin is really special when you're collecting a piece of this ecosystem, which has got this extra little layer of specialness on top, which I really like.
Yeah, it's funny when Adam, Leo, and I had first interviewed Casey. It's almost coming up on a year. It was September 1st, 2022. So it was about 4 months before mainnet had launched. He told us the whole rare sats thing and collecting these types of rare sats. He never told us about the inscription portion of it. And that really caught me off guard, but I still find it so fascinating, even though, rare sats, it had its bubble. Now it's kind of deflated because more supplies come out into the market. It still feels like there's so much untapped potential out there because it's similar to like a commodity. You really have to have this proof of work to really extract these different types of sats. You can kind of see this world where you can have something like influencer sats or these type of sats where somebody who is a big personality says, hey, these type of sats are going to be my currency for my ecosystem, and you're going to have to figure out, you're going to have to go through this type of mechanism or game to kind of extract these so that you can dabble into my ecosystem. So that'll be interesting when that pops up. But from an operator of an inscription tool, you guys have the rare sats component, you have the different types of data files, BRC20, SNS. What is the most complex component of an inscription service to operate? Is it the inscription tool itself of putting data into Bitcoin? Is it the payments rail? Give us a little bit of insight of like what is the toughest part of the day of operating OrdinalsBot?
There's a couple of angles to it. I think that the Ord client itself is really early software, right? We're still in like 0.08 version, and there's only 2 people working on it full time now. With that said, they've now created a whole non-profit around it, and so there's really good work going around building a nice team to expand on it. But the fact is, it's really early software, so there's updates and there's maybe potentially bugs and there's how it handles reorgs and things. So, but we are building a whole business around this essentially beta version software, right? And so we need to keep a close eye on how it operates and respond quickly to problems to make sure we've got everything ticking over. So that's been a challenge, sometimes to try and handle the reorgs and when things might be, not indexing properly and making sure we're on that side of things. So it's more of just a factor of we're early essentially, and we're building with the ecosystem, and it'll improve and improve and improve over time. So it's something we're more than happy to look into and make sure we focus on and improve it as we can, and open our GitHub issues and improve for everybody the whole ecosystem. But as a challenge, liquidity management is a thing. Bitcoin is like a fiddly little, UTXOs and all this kind of jargon that I'm a front end guy, so I'm happy we've got a back end team, really looking at focusing and improving that. But it is a fact that, someone wants to inscribe 10,000 ordinals, inscriptions, you need to have those UTXOs ready to go. If you don't have them, you need to go and organize them to make sure you've got them all created, and so that's part of the liquidity management, and basically making sure that we've got enough UTXOs in various sizes, ready to go to handle any load that comes in. So that's a really nice technical challenge to figure out. And then from my side, more from the front end side, there's been a lot of friction with file optimization, because obviously inscribing on Bitcoin is quite an expensive thing to do. It's a real premium real estate. So the larger the file size, it can become really quite expensive to inscribe many files, or even just inscribe one big file. So part of what I've been working a lot with people who have came to us like one-to-one to launch collections is that optimization step, because sometimes just by running it through an optimizer with a lossless compression, you can save like 90%. Actually, like the file size will go down literally 90%, and you don't see any visual difference between the images. But you've just saved yourself 90% of a chain fee, you know. So there's these little tweaks and steps that we really are enjoying working on. It's you know, it's a lot of work during the day, but at the same time we're learning, hey, you know what, maybe we can automate that, you know, that especially the optimization part, which we did, right? So we've launched, if you drag and drop an image now onto our tool, it'll optimize by default and save you that money by default. And instantly we got feedback saying, we want an option to turn that off. I want to optimize it myself. So it's a checkbox you can turn on and off essentially. But things like that, you know, there's a lot of cool and really exciting technical challenges, but also my brain's also thinking like, how can we automate and extract a lot of that stuff and automate it and save our time, but maybe potentially offload that time saving to the client as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I have two stories to the response of what you just stated. One was the checkbox caught me off guard once when the Bitcoin apes were inscribing, and you had to have the byte perfect. Meanwhile, I spent $500 on these, on 20, the optimized ones, only to find out you had to have the byte perfect ones. I was like, God, wasted money. But I guess they're sub 1 million inscriptions, so maybe they will have some value. On the other end, when we worked with Coldy to do Filthy Fiat, you saved him a ton of money on the inscriptions, and he actually had no idea how to even go about it. So we had to lean on your expertise of the inscription tool, because this is back in March, before really anything had taken off, and saved a lot of money. And you probably learned a lot from that experience. I learned a lot from that experience to go from, submitting those 300 items to then passing it off to you to inscribe it, to then send it to the vaults, to then sell. Oh my God, it was such a manual process, which is still hasn't gotten too much better from today. It is a little bit more simplified, but that was a really, really fun experience that I think about, and it almost sold out completely. I think he still holds maybe a handful of them, but it was very, very successful.
I'll never forget a thing that Coldy said on our Twitter space, actually, which was blockchain as a canvas. When he was talking about those limitations and the fact that he's used to just doing 12 megabyte images and not caring where it goes, and really high definition stuff. And this limitation he actually quite enjoyed, because it was like, okay, cool, that's my parameter, and I'll work around it and I'll make it work. And that's what artists do, right? They paint on whatever canvas they've got. And he said blockchain as a canvas. I thought that was a really interesting thing.
Yeah, and now you see it even refined a little bit to where the rare sats community is saying that the sat is now the canvas, right? Whereas Coldy he'd gone back and forth, and with Bitcoin, he had a 10-second video, which he ended up cutting up into 300 different pieces, still images, to then you could make the full piece together. But through this whole conversation now, the ordinal space, it is down bad. People are saying that we're dead, although, right, those that are in the space, we know it's definitely not. But the competition has heated up to where you now have a handful of marketplaces kind of dominating these certain areas. You have Unisat is dominating BRC20, Magic Eden's the PFP kind of flip community. Ordinals Wallet's getting into gaming. They're kind of still figuring out their footing as well. You have OrdinalsBot, which is just, the inscription tooling and all the other packaging that you have together. How do you guys stay competitive in the inscription game, whereas a lot of these other marketplaces also offer inscriptions plus tradings plus larger communities? Where do you tend to set yourself apart, and where do you see the inscription industry moving forward or going in the next few years?
It's a great question. I think we've had this since the beginning. Gamma was the first one to kind of compete against us, and then many other people have it, but we've not really sweated it too much. I think we're still kind of the premium choice for people to come and do it. We've got the best experience and the best functionality and the best features. So I think we've not really had an issue with the competition so far from the inscription side, actually. BRC20 aside, right? There's been a ton of volume obviously on Unisat, but I'm talking about just like your actual people who want to inscribe stuff. It's been pretty good. And then again, from the Magic Eden's a great example. They actually DM'd me, and I was like, this is definitely a scam, who's this? But it turned out it was actually Magic Eden before they launched their collection. And we're looking into using our API, looking into, how can we basically, work together to make their launch quicker. And we went back and forth on different things, and we ended up just doing a lot of manual work for them. So like I mentioned about the optimization step and the inscription step, they wanted to pre-inscribe everything first, and then essentially list them as PSPTs. So we have handled probably 80% of all the drops that they've done. We've inscribed for Magic Eden. Nobody really knows this. We don't really shout about it, but that's the fact. A lot of those collections came through our Discord, essentially with private channel with Magic Eden. They'll give us the client. We'll I'll just onboard them. I'll say, cool, send me the artwork, see where you're at, and then I'll just optimize it for them. We'll go back and forth on that. And then more recently, if there's a chance to do recursion, I've kind of automated that process now on my side, and kind of done that for them as well. Made a recursive collection for them. So yeah, we launched a bunch of things from Magic Eden. So I think there's a lot of stuff that OrdinalsBot can do behind the scenes. And I think that I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping the narrative switches to people realizing that people want to focus on a marketplace, and the inscription thing is just that we're doing such a good job at it. It makes it a no-brainer almost just to offload that to us. So I'm hoping we can, work it in a way where they'll end up kind of all roads will lead back to us to be the inscription service. And if not, we'll figure it out. We've got many other ideas that we're launching that are not just directly about inscriptions. We've got other stuff in the pipeline. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really competitive space, but we're not really fazed by it. We're more excited by it. We're seeing really cool. Magic Eden are in the space. That's amazing. So it's really, really cool to see, innovation and things happening and people building, and we'll just keep, shipping cool features and staying ahead of the curve when it comes to functionality and also that kind of premium, making sure everything works properly.
Yeah, when Magic Eden entered the space, it was the first real, Goliath who'd come in with 200 million, in their treasury, and said that they saw this market as a big opportunity and they wanted to come in and obviously try to monopolize it. And, they've done a good job at their market share. But from, OrdinalsBot perspective, I've learned that the best businesses are the ones that operate in the background where you don't need to put as much attention. Although, the fame and the getting the spotlight is awesome, but sometimes the most revenue generated is generally those that go, kind of under the table or unspoken about. But to finalize, and to wrap this whole thing up together, just from your personal perspective as somebody who's been in it since the beginning, you've got, you've seen the whole spectrum of what type of project requests, what type of technologies are being implemented. What's your favorite aspect about Ordinals? What's your favorite technology that's come out of this whole entire thing over the last 8 months?
I would say it's more like, as I mentioned, I'm a UX kind of a trained person, so I think that's my biggest, the most exciting thing I've seen come out of all Ordinals is really it's pushed Bitcoin UX, tenfold, 100-fold. I don't know, but really, really pushed it forward in terms of where it was. This time last year, right? There was some hardcore Bitcoin wallets there, but not really so user friendly. There was no marketplaces, there was no inscription tools, etc. Things like that. So I think that's been a really great innovator for the space. And then the likes of Xverse or Hero Wallet who come in and offer that really nice Ordinals first, Bitcoin first experience in the wallet, marketplace functionality with PSBTs, all these really nice one-click things is something I'm really excited about. And then building infrastructure services like mine, on Bitcoin, it's just, there's nothing better. We get to build stuff on Bitcoin all day. It's like the best thing ever, because we're a big, obviously bullish on Bitcoin long term and think it's got to be a great thing. I think that Ordinals has got to do basically for data what it's done for payments. Essentially, it's got to offer this really nice decentralized layer that people can get involved with and build essentially anything on top of. We're seeing now people inscribing React components and websites and things, and identity and artwork and fungible tokens. The options are limitless, basically. So I'm excited to see where the space goes, and I think that I'm excited also to see how the Ord client evolves over time, and maybe we can get more developers on that team so that really build that out and make it more efficient. Because I think that's one thing that's been criticized about this, is that it's really inefficient, and why you storing this stuff as human readable and everything on chain, and you're all idiots. It's like, well, we're not actually idiots. We just did it. We just went ahead and did it. We're not saying it's perfect, right? There's a lot of improvements that can be made, and we will make them. But look what we've achieved in the last 6 months for Bitcoin. Just by just going at it and then just like seeing what sticks and then just reiterating, we've been able to have a huge inflow of people who have never used Bitcoin before, a huge re-inflow of developers who started on Bitcoin and left because there was just nothing happening. Now they're coming back, right? They're really excited to come back. So yeah, all in all, I'm just really excited for what Ordinals have done for Bitcoin, and excited to see like how it can be improved in the future and what other avenues it leads to in terms of L2s and different things.
Brian's happy for Bitcoin to be out of the Stone Age and then kind of pulled right into the frontier where all of these smart contract platforms are currently dabbling and playing in. So Brian, I appreciate you for coming on, man. Like I said, we've been trying to do this for a long time. I was busy, then you'd get busy, and then it was just like never be able to happen. So finally got to put it on the books. I'm excited to see where OrdinalsBot lands in the next 6 months. And also some of those new features that maybe aren't inscription related. I know you're going to pull out something innovative, as you have done with Satoshibles and OrdinalsBot and everything else that you're doing. So appreciate you for sharing your time with us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll catch you next time.